So the FBI dragged it out, I think, for about a year. Finally, they said, okay, all right, we'll comply. We got to comply. So they provided the congressional committees with documents about Stingray and Carnivore. The only problem is most of those documents were blacked out because Congress didn't have the clearances to know what the FBI is doing. You're going to see as we go through these slides, that's a big tactic the government uses, is to claim something is classified when it's not. And to claim something is classified that the American people and their representatives have a right to know, to black that out and claim it's classified, and you don't have the clearance, and I don't have the clearance, not anymore anyway. You don't have the clearance to see it, so you have no right, so you just can't know about that program because it's classified. And they provided blacked out documents which meant nothing, and that's all that Congress has done. They have done that on Benghazi. They provided documents on Benghazi that are so heavily blacked out you can't even read what happened. I'm going to get in. I sit humbly on the Citizens Commission for Benghazi, and we're working on getting the truth out. There's a couple, General Lyons, General Paul Valley, really men, and Claire Lopez, men and women of honor that are getting to the truth, and these are high-ranking folks. So it's coming out. It is going to come out, not from the government. It's coming out. And it is dark. And you can tell by the way they've been holding back that something really bad is going on. And if I was to tell you, it would shock you. The Central Intelligence Agency, where I used to work, from the belly of the beast. I had several positions there, traveled quite a bit around the world, humbly. I was an agent on the protective detail for William Casey, and I dispute Bob Woodward's book when he claims he got in and talked to William Casey. He didn't. We were there. But anyway, enough said. But this is something about the CIA that, and it's in the book, Harry Truman made this quote just after the CIA was created and began operations. He said this: "There is something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow over our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it." Harry Truman created the CIA, and after it began operating, he said, "Oh my God, what have we done?" Excuse me for using that term too loosely. What have we done? That was published in the Washington Post, and then it was mysteriously removed 3 days later, and we never heard from it again. Now, I happen to know that the CIA works the Washington Post and other papers, and they kind of use them sometimes as an arm of them getting information out. What the CIA will do, real quickly, and I won't go into this, there's so much here. The CIA will recruit journalists, and they'll hook them up with GS-15s and some other plugged-in CIA officers at the senior level, and the CIA will feed them information that they want them to have. But if a journalist comes out and publishes something that exposes the CIA, what the CIA will immediately cut off that relationship, and if it's a national security correspondent, cut off their ability to get the news, basically say, don't mess with us. You either play by our rules or you get no information, and that's how they do it. So the stuff that you're getting out about the CIA, much of it has been intentionally, and I'm not saying it's not accurate, but it's been intentionally disseminated by the CIA because of the secrecy apparatus. The authority given to the CIA for national security and in the war on terrorism, they were given an unbelievable amount of unbridled, unchallenged authority. Kidnapping and rendition, going in and snatching somebody off the streets of an allied country, even Italy, for example, without the country's knowledge that they were even doing that. Unbridled power. There were no constraints on that whatsoever. Go out and Google the Italian job, and you'll find out the CIA snatched a guy off of the streets in Italy, wrong guy. Snatched him off the streets, sent him over from torture. They tortured this guy. Then they found out, oops, wrong guy. Let's let him out of the van and let him go. Unfortunately for them, the Italian police were monitoring the CIA's cell phone calls and heard them snatch this guy. And now 33 CIA agents have been indicted by the Italian government for kidnapping. The station chief almost was thrown in jail. Of course, they're not releasing, the States is not releasing him. Then there's 32 others that they're trying to get their hands on because of this operation. And as I've seen in the CIA, you see these spy movies and they look so sophisticated. Well, one of the guys in the snatch and grab got on the cell phone, called his wife back in Texas and said, "We got him, honey, we got him," right on an open cell phone. And of course, the Carbonari just grabbed that right up and they moved in and they busted those guys. So, but that's an allied government. Don't you think we ought to advise them at least that we're about to do this on the streets of their country? No, there was no constraints placed on this whatsoever. We turned them over to foreign intelligence services that we knew tortured these people badly. Now, we don't get engaged in torture. Well, at least they say we don't. We don't engage in torture, so what we did was we turned them over to countries that did. What's the difference? But we did. Again, they were given the authority to do that. We established secret prisons in foreign countries without the consent or knowledge of Congress. And of course, we humble little people, the American people, we sure didn't know about that. No constraints whatsoever. Snatches and grabs, they did this in about 100 foreign countries, and they found out that hundreds of these people had no affiliation with Al-Qaeda whatsoever. They snatched these people and they were like, well, oops, no connection at all. So they scooped up a lot of people who were innocent because there was no limits. There was no congressional constraints on what they were doing. Authority to spy on U.S. citizens, this is chilling. The CIA's authority, based on the documents that are in place and the regulations, they only have the authority to conduct foreign operations, and the NSA as well. That was in the charter, the limits they placed on the CIA. You will not operate within the United States unless there's a KGB officer trying to recruit somebody, espionage. But you will not surveil U.S. citizens. Well, now, the CIA has a CIA officer in almost every police fusion center in all 50 states of the United States. That CIA officer is collecting information on U.S. citizens along with the fusion center police and sending it back to Langley. They're not supposed to be doing that. Okay, Assistant Director James Monier Simon Jr. after 9/11 made this chilling proposal. Right? This is in the book. He proposed, all right, let's do this. And we're going to put this before Department of Homeland Security and others. What we're proposing is to put a chip in the body of every American that's an American citizen that has their retinal scan data, their DNA and other things. We want to put this chip in people so that we can scan, for terrorism reasons, we'll know who's a citizen and who's not based on the implantation of this chip in people's bodies. Few seconds of silence. That's abominable. Now, it went before Congress and they said, oh, no, you don't. Drop it. And after a little bit of a battle, he finally dropped it. But the fact that the CIA even proposed seriously to do this should blow our minds. Okay? Millions of taxpayer dollars, I've talked about this, are allotted to run secret operations that we don't know about, we don't approve, we have no idea, because we're just the little people. We don't have the clearances. They're a little bit above us. They're the experts, so we don't really need to know what they're doing, even though they're spending our money. In Afghanistan, I talk about this in the book a little bit, we paid Iraqi sources to come over, and the CIA did, and provide information on whether or not Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. So these defectors, Iraqi defectors, came over, and the CIA said, look, we'll pay you, I can't say the exact amount because it's blacked out in the book, but they said, okay, General so-and-so, we'll pay you X million dollars if you'll give us information on what Saddam is doing. So there were 3 major generals. We paid them millions of dollars to give us information about Saddam Hussein and his program of weapons of mass destruction. Turned out the information was false. And we based a large part of our decision to go into Iraq based on the information that these defectors gave us. One has just come out, I think it was a CBS News interview, and said, I just did it to get back at Saddam Hussein and get the money. And the other 2 did. So we got false information. We used that in large part to go into Iraq and conduct military operations, and the information was false, and you and I paid for it. And they won't tell us how much. Okay, there's no accounting to Congress. Their budget, the CIA's budget, is kept secret. Not even the General Accounting Office can have access to how much they're spending. Now, when I was in there, we threw it around like confetti. So I know how liberally they spend it, our tax dollars, and there's no accountability whatsoever, especially to us. The state secrets privilege, I'm going to talk about that. Most people don't know about it. That's the government's way of shutting down a lawsuit against it, concealing it in court so it will never see the light of day and no one will ever see the evidence in that case. Not even Congress, a person's congressman or senator can go in ever and see that evidence, and they use and they invoke the state secrets privilege. Government claimed this started very heavily under the Bush administration, specifically Dick Cheney. I mean, this stuff is pan administration. This is not just the current administration, as wild as that is. This is pan administration. It goes all the way back to 1953. This started under the Bush administration. They claimed they had done it 47 times. It is being used more by President Obama now than George Bush did. I did the research that I conducted. and I'm probably shooting low, indicated they've used it 400 times against U.S. citizens that were not terrorists and had not broken the law. They were lawsuits filed against the CIA and the NSA, one right now about the Electronic Freedom Foundation. They're filing a suit against NSA surveillance of American citizens. The NSA is using the state secrets privilege to shut it down and say, we have this state secrets privilege, we have the privilege to do this, we're shutting this case down, we're concealing all the evidence, it will stop right here in court, we will seal it, and no one can ever have access to this information again. They've done it at least 400 times. I'll show you an actual case. They're trying it with NSA right now. So you need to know what the state secrets privilege is, because I think only about 6 people raised their hand when I brought it up. They keep it quiet for a reason. Real quickly, the CIA, NSA, and FBI, believe it or not, they have full access to your bank accounts. Did you know that? They can go and get in your bank account anytime they want. Same thing. It's called the FinCEN program. It's under the Patriot Act. It's called the Bank Secrecy Act, where if they submit a national security letter under Section 215 of the Patriot Act and they say, we need access to this person's data, it has to be turned over. But what the financial institutions do is they're afraid. They're afraid of the FBI and they're afraid of the CIA, and so what they do is they over-report. They give them everything. They're like, man, we don't want to go to jail. CEO John Jones doesn't want to go to jail. So he says, okay, FBI, CIA, here's everything under FinCEN. And they just give them all our bank account information. That's what's happening. So they can go right into your bank account and pull that information out. And there's a whole lot you can tell about somebody, at least me, from their bank account, what they're doing, and their taxes and everything else. Surveillance from space. Let's get into the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I'm working through these big agencies of government. When I'm done with them, I'm going to start with what's going on in Washington, probably after the next break, and the Muslim Brotherhood and things like that, which is extremely important. But we'll work on this right now. This is the foundation of where we lost our freedoms, and it's important to know this stuff because it's going on today. Department of Homeland Security requested officially to use intelligence satellites to conduct surveillance inside the U.S. on U.S. citizens for quote-unquote law enforcement purposes. Is that a broad term? Yeah. Now they're doing this without a warrant, and they're doing it broadly. The Fourth Amendment says it's got to be specific. They're doing this broadly without a warrant. Okay? At least they tried to. There was a big firestorm after congressional opposition. Thank God the proposal was scrapped. But that's what they were trying to do. The Department of Homeland Security is now, though, conducting warrantless searches of your safety deposit boxes. Did you know they had access? Those of you that have safety deposit boxes, they have open access to your safety deposit box. They can go in there with a letter and say, we need to see so-and-so's the contents of that safety deposit box without a warrant, and get into your safety deposit box. Heads up, if you got something in there that's personal, I would take it out. Okay. The cybersecurity program, well, we need cybersecurity, right? And that's true. But they're using cybersecurity to scan all of our emails. So we got multiple collection of our personal data going on here. All right, let's talk about some more Department of Homeland Security information as we go on. Now, somebody's probably heard about a little of this, I'm sure. This is true. The Media Matters and others tried to come out and say that it was bogus. It was just a right-wing conspiracy theory. And conspiracy theory is a term the CIA used from way back. You label your enemy that and they lose credibility. So that's what they try to use a lot of the time. But this is true. In February 2012, Department of Homeland Security ordered 450 million rounds of .40 caliber hollow point ammunition. Now, you can see that I italicized hollow point. I did that for a reason. September 2012, they ordered another 200 million rounds of .223 AR-15 caliber hollow point information. AR-15 assault rifle hollow point. Hollow point ammunition is made to go in there and bounce around and just tear you up. Okay? Total purchase was 1.6 billion rounds, which is more than they spent in Iraq at the height of the Iraqi war. This is being spent by the Department of Homeland Security, which is supposed to protect who? Us from terrorism, right? So why are they buying all these rounds when they're supposed to protect us within the United States to this extent? What are they? Why? Why that much? And to protect who? Well, they claim, and Janet Napolitano came out and said, well, we're doing this for personal defense within the United States. Personal defense from whom?